I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everyone else. I like I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played a glitchy or hacked game before, though I don't think I want to play any after the experience I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was planning I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I liked that I liked how you could get to explore the towns in it. Until I noticed that out of my peripheral vision that the mailman arrived and put something in my mailbox as usual and left. I paused my game to go see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle, whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks. I know that because I recognized his handwriting. Although what was weird is how it looked. It looked badly written and scratchy, probably chicken scratch, and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down, and it was in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow. Before it was too late, and I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me, and if you don't destroy the CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll destroy him, but do it quickly. Otherwise, he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. That's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please. Kyle. Anyway, I looked at the disc and it was like any ordinary computer CDR disc, except it had black marker on it written sonic.exe, and it was much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have got it from somewhere else, like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on the writing of the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it since I'm a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room and turned on my computer and put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was like the first Sonic game. I was like, awesome. Because like I said earlier, I like the classics. The first thing I noticed that was out of place was when I pressed the start button. When I pressed start, there was a split second when I saw the title image turned into something much different. Something that I now consider horrifying before cutting to black. I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the game cut to black. The sky had darkened, the title emblem was rusted and ruined. The Sega 1991 was now instead Sega 666, and the water had turned red like blood. Except it looked hyper-realistic. But the freakiest thing that was in that split-second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding, with two glowing red dots staring right at me. And his smile had stretched wider up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about that image. When I saw it, though, I figured it was just a glitch and forgot about it. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. Then another weird thing happened. The save file select from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up, and I was like, what's this doing in the first Sonic game? Anyway, then I noticed something was off. The background was dark, cloudy sky. I have the bed at Stardust Speedway, a level from Sonic CD, and there were only 3 save files. The music that was that creepy caverns winter music from Earthbound. It was only extended and seemed to have been in reverse. And the image for the save file where you see a preview of the level while you're on is just static for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character select. It showed only Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Now, I was sure that something was up. I mean, how can you play as Dr. Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? That's when I realized this wasn't a glitchy game. It was a hacked game. Yeah, it definitely looked hacked. It was very creepy, but as a smart gamer, I wasn't scared. I told myself that it was just a hacked game and there was nothing wrong with that. Anyways, shaking off that creeped out feeling, I picked file 1 and chose Tails. And when I selected it and got started, the game froze for about 5 seconds, and I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded awful like that Kekafa guy from Final Fantasy before cutting to black. The screen stayed black for about 10 more seconds or more. Then it showed the typical level title screen, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red, and the text only showed Hill Act 1. The screen faded, and the music was different, though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. Anyway, I started playing and had Tails start running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that as Tails was running along, the level there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. That was when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow depth tunes. Very slowly as I kept going, I suddenly saw something and stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground, bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I'd never seen him have before. So I had to move along, and he kept that worried look on his face as he kept moving. I saw more dead animals as Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowered. He moved past more dead animals as I was shocked to see how they all died. They looked like somebody killed them in rather gruesome ways. A squirrel was hanged on a tree, with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out and his throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw this massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After a few more seconds, there were no more animals, and the music seemed to stop. I still kept Tails to continue. After a minute passed, after the music stopped, Tails was running up a hill, and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there, on the other side of the screen, with his back against Tails, with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile faltered, obviously noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, if not acting like he was totally oblivious of Tails' presence. Tails walked slowly towards Sonic, and I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make a move, so this had to have been a cutscene. Suddenly, I began to have a growing feeling of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic, getting his attention. I felt that Tails was in danger and something was bad something bad was going to happen, I heard faint static and growing louder and louder as Tails was but inches away of Sonic, and stopped and struck his head out to touch him. The forbidding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic as the static grew louder. Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open, and they were black with those red glowing dots. Just like in the title image, though there wasn't a smile. When that happened, the screen turned black and the static sound was off. It stayed like that. It stayed black for about 7 seconds, and then white text appeared, forming a message saying, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" At this point, I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue with the game, but my curiosity got the better of me, like it always does. When I was taken to a different level, with the level title now saying Hide and Seek. This time, I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits. It's this time, he actually looked at me and made frantic gestures to me as if he wanted to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the fourth wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could, making him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of that creepy theme when you meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from Sonic Adventure 2 was playing. As I made Tails trek through the desolated forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run away from. Suddenly I heard that creepy laugh again. That awful Kefka laugh. Right after 10 seconds had passed, as I helped Tails run through the forest and then started seeing flashes of Sonic popping up everywhere on the screen, and again with those black and red eyes. The music changed to that suspenseful, drowning jingle as I see Sonic behind Tails slowly gaining up on him, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. That flying pose his sprite was making looked very similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic.exe, except it was just Sonic and he had the black and red eyes again. Only this time he had the most deranged looking grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving to the poor little fox as he gained up on him. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, another cutscene, the music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails lied there and started crying for 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch, and I kind of teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails was looking up in horror. Blood started coming down those blackened eyes of Sonic as a grin slowly grew on his face, and he looked down at the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. Just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails. Right before the screen went black, there was a loud screeching noise that only lasted for 5 seconds. The text returned, only this time saying, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" Then that god-awful laugh came with it. I was so shocked by what had happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails are supposed to be best friends, right? No way did Sonic do that to him. I shook the shock off as I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but in the TV screen itself, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding, his orange fur had gone black, and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came with it again. The screen cut to black again and stayed there for about another 10 seconds. This time the level said, "You cannot run." I was really freaked out by now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch or a hack or some kind of sick, twisted joke. Or if anything really, but despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the scrap brain zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark, reddish, cloudy sky, but it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Gygas theme right after you beat Pokey and Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid, just like Tails did, though not as much. But much rather, he looked a little unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails and looked like as he wasn't unsure about what was going on. But I made him move anyway. He ran down the straight pathway of this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker, red static a couple times. And then that maddening laugh came again. Then after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible is going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated walking down this bloodstained road, but I kept making him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes. And then red static appeared once again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but a black screen with the text saying, "Found you," I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on? Anyway, the red static came again, and I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time that high-pitched squealing from the silent hill whose final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be a pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punch Sonic, but Sonic vanished in a black pixelated smoke before I could even land a hit. That terrible laugh went off again. Then Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles again. Then I made him punch him again. And Sonic vanished again, laughing. Knuckles was panicking even more. And I even felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees and clutched his head, sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles. And then the screen went black with another distorted, screeching noise that lasted for about 3 seconds. Another text message appeared saying, "So many souls to play with, so little time. Wouldn't you agree?" What the hell? What the hell? What is going on? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think about that. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time, on the second file box, had Knuckles in the TV screen. His fur had darkened to a reddish gray. His dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. And he had a look of sadness on his face. I began to think that those were actual characters trapped in those TV screens in the save files, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. I selected Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky, playing as Robotnik. But anyways, the level title appeared again. This time it said ... which I found really freaky. This time I was in some sort of kind of hallway and didn't really look like it was from any other classic Sonic games. Though it had the pixelated style, the floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were dark grayish purple with an animated candle lights and a few dark bloodstains here and there. There was a dark red curtain hanging above the top of the screen every 12 seconds or so. The red curtain sways very slowly, but whenever you're playing the game, you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant, a piano playing a rather sad yet peaceful song, but I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous like Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did a little animation when I just left him standing. He turns his head to the left and right at least twice, then shrugs at me as if he had no idea where he was or what was going on, even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen. I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation. Then I stopped at a long flight down the hallway. Then I stopped at a long flight of stairs leading downward. Now I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, though. I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls have gotten darker and reddish. The red torches are now an eerie blue. Then we led it on to another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs. Down. This one was much darker. It took at least a full minute. Then I heard that horrid Keck laugh again, and then the music slowly faded until it was quiet. Until the walls turned more dark red and the torches were a black flame now. When Robotnik landed on the third hallway, I noticed him now looked really creeped out. Though he tried to hide it, I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Then suddenly Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik, the same way he did Knuckles in the red static. The red static lasted for 15 seconds, and then it showed me a most unpleasant image. The image shown showed a hyper-realistic of Sonic, standing in the darkness, where you can only see his face, while his head and torso faded into the black. And when I say hyper-realistic, I mean he looked so real, you could actually see the lines on his fur, as if you could actually feel the fur if you touched the screen. His face. Oh God. He had the most horrifying smile I've ever seen. And that's saying something, considering I saw that image at the start of the game. His eyes are wide and black, and once again crying blood, which also looked very hyper-realistic. And there were two small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me. As if staring into my mind, his grin was wide and demonic. It literally stretched to the sides of his face like a sheer cat, except Sonic had fangs, very sharp fangs, much like the werehog's teeth, except more vicious looking, somewhat yellow and yellowish, and from the look of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs as if he ate some animal. I stared at the gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it. I felt as if it was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face, it took 10 seconds for it to itch itself off into my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and on the 3rd time I heard the kick laugh, except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even. It went back to the image again, except this time there was a text again, though it was messed up, but it was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I've ever looked at since I had this game. I am God. It was when I read that message while looking at Sonic, it hit me. I realized, there and then, this Sonic was a monster. A pure, evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. And all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys. And the game is the very gateway into his psychotic, nightmarish world, and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the camera, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but literally a spiraling abyss of pure darkness before the red static came on again. This time it was much louder and distorted, so loud that it hurt my ears. I yelled and grabbed my ears at my ears as the red static screeched for a good 7 seconds. Then it stopped and showed nothing but a black screen. As I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. Ready for round 2, Tom? The kick laugh, now sounding more clear, as if Sonic was right behind me, playing again 3 times as I looked at the text in shock and confusion. Then I booted back up to the main menu. This time the 3rd save file had a TV image of Robotnik in the same tormented state as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned to a dull gray, his mustache drooped and had blackened, his glasses broken, blood coming from them, and he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and I cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they're going through. They were forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog, and always will be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on, no matter what I did. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what just happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people, plays his game in more ways than one, and then when he gets bored, he drags you into the game. Literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you, and always is as his toy. I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there, but at least I can manage. But I managed to turn it back on now. After 25 seconds, I heard a voice right behind me, like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom. Then I turned around to see where the voice came from, and what I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling with bloodstains under its eyes.